All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Ed Solly, and you are joining the Ed Solly audio show, but in video form this time. And we are talking with Jake Evans, who's running for the 6th District of Congress here in Georgia, the newly formed district. It's a heavy Republican race, and Jake is one of the front runners, so we're glad that he's going to sit down with us, talk about some of his points and some of the things that he's really focused on. So let's dive in. So Jake, tell me about how you got into this race. I think you were in old 6th starting, and then with new 6th, so after redistricting came in, you stayed with it, and so you've been one of the original front runners for the 6th district. So tell me how that got started.
That's right, yeah. So I've been in since July of last year, and it's been going great. Redistricting was this year, so they redrew the district lines. Nobody really knew what the new district was going to look like. I didn't. I've been running a campaign based on conviction and based on core beliefs. So from day one, I've been running a bold, unafraid conservative campaign that is solely focused on redelivering America to the people and taking it from special interests in the D.C. swamp and the radical left. And so we've had tremendous success. It's amazing, 6 months in with the endorsements and the fundraising that we've had, and now we're a couple months out from Election Day, so it's scary almost in many ways, but we feel as though we're in a very good position, and it's been a blessing, and we're going to keep up the momentum.
Yeah, it feels like it's kind of starting to wrap up. It's a long road you've been on. So I know one of your big things that you talk about a lot is weak-kneed Republicans. I see that all over. Jake Evans does not like weak-kneed Republicans. So tell me what's a weak-kneed Republican, and how do we go about fixing and giving them a little leg braces?
That's great. Well, I like that. I think a lot more Republicans need leg braces. We got to have bold, strong leadership. I think last year a lot of conservatives folded when the going got tough, and we've got to stand up, because right now in America, the institutions are stacked against the Republicans. Big tech is sold out to the left. The media is sold out to the left. Our research institutions are sold out to the left. And so the deck is conservatives is stacked against us. And if we don't stand up strong, if we don't not allow any bend in the knees, then what's going to happen is America, the greatest country on earth, is gradually going to be pulled further and further to socialism, further away from the principles that the country was founded on. So I'm non-negotiable on weak-kneed Republicans. I want them all out of the Republican Party.
Well, and one of the things I think we're seeing, and you and I have talked about this a little bit offline, is this is, I think, the year for young Republicans. I think that this new shift in how advertising happens, how people get their message out, there's just this generational gap. One of the things we're going to do, we're going to bring both our wives on here in a minute and let them talk about it. I think that's something a little different. I see Bailey going to events and doing things with you and for you and representing you, and I'm sure there's no fear or concern on what she's going to say, and her stances align with your stances, and mine are the same. And it's similar, and that I think that these young married Republicans, we're going to see a strong push this year, not just here in Georgia, but at the Capitol. And then one of the main topics I want to talk to you about is election integrity. So that's been a big issue, obviously, since 2020. Georgia kind of went from obscurity into the highlight. We've never really been a toss-up state. And then all of a sudden we were this huge attention, everything's gone wrong. And now we've got to pass legislation to fix the things that we didn't even know were broken at the time. But what's scary is it's HB1, right? HB1 is a scary, scary bill, because it brings the federal government down to a state's responsibility, which is something we've seen happening 50, 100 years running now. But I think this one treads on new water. So tell me your thoughts on HB1 and what we do, because I think it's probably DOA now through this election cycle, but I bet we revisit it, and it's something that comes up in 2, 4, 6 years, hopefully while you're serving up in the Capitol.
Yeah. Well, first, you're dead on as far as getting the wives involved. My wife, Bailey's the best asset I got on my campaign, and I try to lean on her as much as I can. She was in my launch video. Yeah. I started with her face and not my face, which I think was a good thing. HR1, I've told group after group this, and every time the Democrats get elected, they try to do two things. The first thing is they try to open the border because they think that if they can get illegals across into the United States dependent on government entitlements, they're going to be likely to vote Democrat. And that's about consolidating power. And they do it because they want to effectively monopolize all of our form of government, and they're willing to jeopardize the safety of our local communities, jeopardize and increase sex trafficking, also drug trade, and so that's an issue. The second thing they always do is they try to do fundamental election reform. They did it with HAVA, they did it with the voter motor law under both Obama and Bill Clinton, and now they're trying to do it with H.R. 1. H.R. 1, in my opinion, is unconstitutional right out of the gate. As you just alluded to, there's something called the Elections Clause. The Election Clause is both at the federal level, United States Constitution, and most states have them, which says that the time, manner, and place of elections can only be established at the state level by state legislators from people who are elected by the constituents. What the liberals first tried to do last year was they tried to do, and I know this because I served as lead counsel for the Pennsylvania House all the way before the United States Supreme Court on this very issue, is they tried to use COVID as a pretext to file lawsuits in order to erode away our electoral protections, eliminating signature verification for absentee voting, also allowing for, in my opinion, way too much drop-off uses, allowing for ballot harvesting. At least in Pennsylvania, they tried to do it. Now what they're trying to do is they're actually trying to change that legislatively through H.R. 1. H.R. 1 federalizes elections, which is unconstitutional, federalizes campaign finance. I'm former chairman of Georgia's Transparency and Campaign Finance Commission. That's also unconstitutional. And they're trying to allow for ballot harvesting, allow for max use of drop boxes, eradicate voter identification. So it is a disaster. I believe that it seeks to fundamentally change our form of government. Some people say it's an overstatement. It's not an overstatement. If you actually look at what's in the bill, it would change our form of government, undermine public confidence in elections. But to the Democrats, all that's okay because all they care about is consolidating power, and that's exactly the aim goal of H.R. 1.
Well, and Democrats have had the same plan, it seems, for forever, which is give people something, don't worry about the consequences because they know you can't take it away. Mm-hmm. It's hard to take it away. So the new thing they got given is they all got to stay home and still vote, or someone came and knocked on their door and took their ballot right in for them. Mm-hmm. You know, this ballot harvesting, that we're seeing videos come out in Georgia now of guys, leafing out ballots and taking pictures before they're putting in the drop box, which, breaking all kinds of laws, and we don't have great enforcement on any of these laws anyway. So, that's one of the big things I hope we get fixed this legislative session is to add some actual enforcement behind these things. But it's been, if you give them something, then you make the Republicans be the bad guys to come take it away. Mm-hmm. It's that parenting trick where one parent's the good parent. Yeah, sure, have ice cream. And then the bad parent has to come in like, you can't just eat ice cream all the time. Yeah. That's kind of what we've gotten ourselves into with the Democrat-Republican Party. And it's this weird balance where the Democrats do it because they know we'll be the good parent. Yeah. And it puts us in this tough parenting mode, but it's necessary because without the strong accountability in these laws, you run into, Venezuela. You run into what we're seeing with Russia now. You run into these insane socialist states that have lost all of their rights and they just wish they could be America. Cuba, right off our waters, their residents wish they had seen it coming and could just stop it before it happened. And they're telling us and they're warning us and we're not listening. Mm-hmm. So one of the things is, I'm involved in my own campaign here, much more local than you are. We'll overlap a little bit, but I've got you've got 750,000 constituents. Is that the new number? And mine's 60,000. So just a little different. But, my big thing that I really have focused in on this year is this CRT in the schools, and I'm a really big proponent for school choice. I think that the money should follow the child. That's where your kids are going to spend most of their childhood, is being influenced by these teachers, and we've taken the influence of the parents away, and it's this nanny state that we've started. And the public education system, just here in Georgia, if you look at it, it's 43% of our budget. It's the highest line item. So tell me your thoughts on what we do federally, first with CRT. How do we address that? Because it's, I'm sure you're an attorney, so you know the difficultness of trying to legislate ideas, because that's effectively what CRT is. And then what's your thoughts on federal spending in the schools, and how can we help parents get control of that?
It's a great question, and it leads into one of the first bills I want to sponsor, which is a bill to eradicate any federal funding for any school that teaches CRT or any critical theories. I think this is a existential threat on our future generations and the fabric of America. What the Democrats seek to do, and I think it's very calculated, and I've talked to many groups about this, which is one part of what the Democrats' playbook that is under-discussed is their attack on the American nuclear family. The number one way that we pass value systems down, just like most society, is from grandparents to children to then grandchildren and so on and so on. That starts from our very beginnings. What the Democrats want to do is they want to attack that system. They want to delegitimize the value passage over time, and they want to create a system where all values are taught through schools, which indoctrinate kids. And so if you look at BLM, one of their core ideologies is the delegitimization of the nuclear family, to somehow claim that that is racist in some way. When if you look at the stats, the number one indicator for long-term success for children is whether you have a two-parent household. That makes sense to me. I don't think that's very controversial.
Yeah, doesn't seem like a hard idea.
Yeah. So I think as Republicans, what we got to get back is talking about the importance of personal responsibility by parents, of understanding that you owe it to your child, regardless of if you get divorced or don't get divorced, but to create an environment long-term that will be conducive for their success. Now, second, CRT, in my opinion, is going to seek to divide and conquer the future of America. Marxism is classic. You create two classes of people, and you try to antagonize one class to create a revolution over the other class. It started with the proletariat and bourgeoisie. Now it's came down to oppressors versus oppressed. And so it creates an artificial divide amongst people to break apart a unification and then antagonize one group to ultimately create a revolution. That's what CRT is. And it's not just CRT, but critical theory is a whole it is a whole indoctrination scheme. You got critical sociology theory. There's even critical math theory.
Sure. Why not fix
Throw
math?
it all in.
Yeah, math doesn't explain itself. Let's come up with ideas.
That's
on
right.
Math. Like Common Core. That was a good one. That worked out real well. Let's change math again. And when you're seeing, one of the things, we've got a friend that he's 28 years as a paratrooper, and he's put in his papers. He's getting out. He's done with the military because it's, you have to take this jab. You have to take this class. He's gotten up relatively high at this point. 28 years in, he can't remove anyone that, he does reserves things. But people will not show up for months on end. And they've written in all these new loopholes, all under this critical race theory guidance on never strengthening our military, because those people are still able to be called up to active duty, and they haven't been in months to training. They don't know, they're out of shape. They're not up to date on the new tactics, on the new machinery. And because of this, everyone's a winner and everyone gets a trophy that somehow has gotten into the military. We're willing to send those people to war, which, unfortunately is now creeping at our doorsteps. We've got Russia overstepping extreme bounds, putting a lot of pressure on Joe Biden to make decisions that I don't think he really wants to make or is capable of making. But at some point the buttons are going to get pressed, and we're going to send critical race theory trained soldiers into a war with Russian trained soldiers. What happens with that? How do we get back to the basics? How do we change and just be a strong military moving forward?
Yeah. Well, we got to get back to being American. The reality with American exceptionalism is it ain't easy. You know, it wasn't easy for our ancestors to take the risk to cross the Atlantic and risk their families and their well-being and their lives to reach a new land of opportunity. And so what's happening now is, again, I think it's through indoctrination. It is through all of the artificial identity characteristics, which a lot of these people use as social currency. I mean, within the Democratic Party, it is a race to who is the most diverse or who has been has the largest victimhood. Right. And it is amazing that everyone is broken down based upon skin color, based upon sexuality, based upon all of these characteristics. And really, what matters is we're all American. We all should be proud to be American. That's one of the core parts of my campaign that I tell group after group. I'm sick and tired of people being ashamed to be American.
Yeah.
We're the greatest country on earth. We, by design, were created to be a land of equal opportunity. We are a land of equal opportunity. I don't see people begging to leave the country. I see people begging to get into the country, and I think that's something to be proud of, not ashamed of.
Right. It's the supply and demand. Simple business idea. If people are trying to get in here, you probably have something they demand. Yeah. You probably have created something that people want to be a part of. I don't see us kicking down the Canadian border. I don't see Canada worried about building a wall try and keep us out. We're good. They can have the frozen north.
Yep.
You know, we're having to protect our boundaries because everyone's trying to get here.
Bingo.
You know, and there's a huge reason for that. And you're exactly right. It's the American exceptionalism that we've lost, we've forgotten, and we've gotten into this, like you said, dividing amongst all these different, credos, but eventually we ran out of credos and started just making them up.
Yeah.
I mean, we've started just adding things that don't even exist to try and, well, I got to feel special. So now I'm a furry. I'm going to identify as a fox. Mm-hmm. I was talking with, there's this lady, Rhonda Thomas. She does a lot of stuff with the schools here in Georgia. And she interviewed some middle schoolers. And their biggest complaint, and this was unprompted. This was, she's just talking to them. What are you seeing in schools? What's concerning you? This is what I do. And they said that the biggest thing that frustrates them is the amount of furries. And now Rhonda's not I guess I'm going to say hip. Rhonda's not a young Republican. So she had no idea what furries were. And so these kids are explaining that these kids get special treatment. Like you can't wear a hat in school, but you can wear ears. You can scratch kids and you can behave literally like an animal and they're protected.
Yeah. Because
no one's willing to take a stand and say, we've lost our minds. We've gotten into a weird category. Let's reel it back in. Like this is gone beyond the, I just want to be myself. Yeah. People don't even want to be themselves anymore. They want to be a made up fictional creature all for this, divisiveness. Because if you don't have a thing, we've teaching kids that they're not special if they don't have a thing.
Yeah.
It's okay just to be an American. It's okay just to be proud of who you are. It's okay just to be proud that you got to grow up with opportunities that 99% of history has never gotten. Mm-hmm. That's okay. So I'm going to move into, obviously you're going federal, but you're running, a big part of your district is Forsyth.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about your district lines, kind of, I know all of Forsyth is in it. And then it expands in north and south and east and west, and everyone's confused. We're actually doing something soon on all the district lines because no one knows where the lines are, what changed. People are still calling me, asking me who's running against Carolyn Bordeaux. I'm like, well, I'm not Lucy McBath, I guess, but in Gwinnett, that's not here.
Yeah.
So there's all these things going on. So tell us about where your lines, who you would represent, and then what you want to bring back to them.
Yeah.
Specifically from when you get into Washington, what you're going to fight on their behalf.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so every 10 years they have a census where they come in and they take note of what the population is, how certain areas grow. Then based upon what that apportionment is of people, they redraw the district lines. I announced for this race back in July, running in the 6th District. I have always been running in the 6th District since July. I haven't deviated on running in the 6th District nor any other district. I want to make that clear. But the 6th originally was East Cobb, North Fulton, parts of DeKalb. they changed the 6 and what they do legally is they want to connect communities of interest. I think it was concluded Forsyth's got more in common with North Fulton than it does Gwinnett. And so Forsyth was added to the 6. They cut out DeKalb. So it goes East Cobb, North Fulton, all of Forsyth, the east part of Cherokee, all of Dawson. There's a little sliver of Gwinnett. So that's the district. I think it's the best district in Georgia by far.
And it's it went from the 6. Now you'll know the numbers better than I did, but the 6 was what, 8% Democrat last election. Does that sound right?
That's right. Yeah.
And then now we're expecting it to be a pretty heavy Republican district. So it's, that's one of the nice things. So we were actually, where I live, we were in the 9th. So Forsyth County was split. So I wasn't in the 7th. I was in the 9th with Andrew Clyde. And I loved going to our 9th district meetings and hearing that on a per capita basis, the 9th district was the most Republican district in the entire country. So I'm glad I can deliver that down to you, that I can be a part of what now will be one of the best Republican districts in the entire country. So one of the big things that, we run into, and this is kind of a break from policy, obviously when I decided I was going to run, people don't love that all the time. So you run into a couple different kinds of people. So I want to see if you can come up with on the fly, just put you on the spot. So the most surprising thing you've heard from a Republican, because you're in the primary still, so most of the mean stuff is probably going to have come from Republicans, which has for me been super shocking. And I'll tell you my wildest story. And then the longest friend that you've had from 10, 15, 20 years ago who all of a sudden remembered your number. And then the best friend, the friend you've stayed close in contact with, who all of a sudden lost your number. And I don't mean names, just inferences. And I can see people shaking their heads. So I know this has happened because it's definitely happened for us. And if it's too much on the spot, we can move on. But I think that those are kind of the funny alleviations to some of this tough policy talk stuff.
Yeah, running a campaign, it's an amazing experience. I've told many people, I think everyone should do it at least once. Even if you're just running for school board, the amount of people that you meet, the amount of opinions that you hear, it tests your skill sets and endurance and perseverance to the highest level. So for me, it's been a fascinating experience. I've met the craziest story. I don't know. I don't think I've had something just totally off the wall yet. I will say when you run for office, you find out who your real friends are. And there's some people you think were your real friends that maybe weren't as good of a friend as you thought they were. And then there's some people that surprise you. There's some people Bailey and I have had, just blessing after blessing of people who are really fired up with the message. And my message is to bring in a new generation of conservative leadership that is based on bold, conservative, unafraid conviction. That's what this country needs right now. I really believe in my heart. You look at what happened last year, that the weak-kneed rhino Republicans are as dangerous to the country as the Democrats. And we have got to bring forward people who are in politics for the right reasons. People who aren't looking for it to get a path to Washington, D.C., but they're looking because they really want to represent the people. My campaign has been a people-first campaign. I talk about election integrity. I talk about the fact that I believe there was fraud in the election last year. A lot of Republicans don't want to touch those issues, and a lot of people run away from those issues. I run into the issues because by running away from the tough issues and kowtowing, bowing down, you're going to ruin the U.S., the best country in the world. And so I want to provide patriots, I want to provide candidates the courage that they can step out and be confident and speak loud and proud about what the Republican Party and what, in my opinion, the American Party is all about. And so that's what my candidacy has been about, and it's been a blessing so far. It really has.
Yeah, and the thing that people forget is they forget that you're a person. They forget that you have parents. They forget that you have a wife. And, you're not doing this. This probably is not going to be the most lucrative choice you've made in your life. These campaigns are expensive.
If you're running for politics for money, that's a big problem.
If you're running as a Republican for politics for money, that's a mistake. So, but that's it. They forget that you're a real person.
Yeah.
And that, they'll say these things and it's like, man, like all I did was say, I like this over here. What are you? Clearly you don't like that. I get it. But man, you didn't have to talk about me like that. I don't understand. Like it's this idea that you're running for office to enrich yourself. And like you said, everyone should do one.
Yeah, I think so.
I will say getting involved and running like this opened my mind to it. It is brutal. I mean, it is, it's rewarding in that you're doing the right thing and you're doing what God's calling you to do and you're trying to fulfill this commitment that you've made to try and make things better. But at the same time, there's times where like you get down these rabbit holes and you can't read the comments.
Yeah.
Never do that. You can't read the comments. That I had to learn that lesson the hard way. You cannot read the comments. You hear it. Everyone says it.
It's very tempting to. Don't do it.
And everyone says don't read the comments. And then you read the comments and you're like, yeah, that's why they say don't read the comments. Because people aren't. It's like reviews online. No one's leaving nice reviews unless they're kind of forced to. They're only leaving a review when they're mad. So it's the same thing. So I'll tell you my quick story on the craziest thing I've heard. And I won't list names. So I won't embarrass anyone, but I'll tell the story and then we'll bring our wives in and hear from them. So when I first decided I was going to run, didn't know exactly how it worked. I'm still relatively new into all this. I've been, a few years involved and decided I'm going to run. So I didn't know what to do. I just started telling people, hey, I'm going to run for office. This is the office I'm going to run for. And it's going to be great. Everyone's going to love me, which turned out to not be the case. But one of the very first people I told, it's like, well, is this the office you're going to run for? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, just so you know, I don't think you should run for that. And I'm going to destroy you if you do it. This wasn't a candidate. This wasn't anyone in office. This was just a person. This was just someone in the public this was at a Republican meeting, so claims to be a Republican. And I was like, I don't understand. What do you mean destroy me? It's like, I'm going to dig through your social media. I'm going to find everything on you. I'm going to make sure it gets out. And fortunately, I've lived a relatively docile life. So I was like, well, you can have my phone, man. You can look through it right now. Everything's logged in. Have a blast. He's like, well, I don't need that. Then I'll just make it up. And I was like, hi, I'm Eddie, by the way. Like, what did I do? And he and I have since reached an understanding and come to a peace. But that was shocking because at this point, this was a year and a half ago. I mean, there wasn't, district lines weren't drawn. No one knew what anything was going to be. Hey, I'm interested in running. And that was one of the first responses. That was wild. And to your point, that changed my view on how I want to interact with people that I see running for office. Yeah. It's just because I may disagree and they may even be running against me. It's hard. It is difficult. Most people aren't going to tell you nice things. Yeah. So anyone that wants to beat you down is not going to be me. Even if whatever it is, we may disagree, but we can find an amicable way to do it. So let's take a break and we will be back with our wives to ask how they're doing through this campaign. We are back and we have been joined by our wives, Bailey and Danny. They are going through this battle with us. And Bailey, I got to see you speak at the Young Republicans Christmas dinner event party. Mm-hmm. You were there representing your husband. Yeah. And this is a heavily crowded field. So it's probably fair to say there's a lot of Republicans in. I don't think any more are going to get in. I can't imagine any more getting in. I can't imagine someone looking at that list and saying, "Yeah, let me jump on in there."
Let's hope not.
Yeah, let me add my hat. I can get 26 votes. So
that 1%.
Yeah. So how do you and Jake stand out? What makes you different? I know he's got your support, and that's one of the differences that I've seen, which is why I wanted to have you on here with us with Danny as well, because it's something I see that's different, specifically with the way I think younger Republicans interact. It's not so separated. I think there's reality, and Jake gets elected, he's going to go home every night and he's going to call you, and, you know, he's going to talk to you about his day. And, you know, for better or worse, there's influence there. That's reality. And I think it's great that you guys are doing this together and you're so out front and you're letting your positions be known just as well as his, which, you know, in most good marriages, those align pretty well. So, so it's nice to actually hear those aligning. But so how do you help Jake stand out? What do y'all do to separate yourself from the pack? Because I mean, this has gotten a bit crowded.
Yeah. Well, I will say the reason why I am so involved is because I want all of the voters to know how committed I am as well. As you guys know, when you're running a race, it's a two-person race. Whether you're there at the event or you're there, you know, when they come home and they want to talk about it, it's very important to me to show, number one, the voters that I'm just as committed to, you know, taking back this country and, you know, fighting the good fight as it is, you know, just being there to support Jake. He's always been there for me and been my rock in tough times and in good times. So I just want to be there for him. But the reason why he sets himself apart from the field is just his commitment and his passion. I have never seen somebody so passionate about wanting to make a difference than Jake. I mean, he goes all in. When he fights his cases for, you know, as a lawyer, he doesn't do anything else but think about how he can make a good, positive difference. And I think he's going to do the same thing for this race.
So tell us about, I'm going to ask you to do the same. Tell them about when I told you I wanted to run. But tell us about the time that Jake came home and said, I've decided I want to run for Congress. How did that conversation go? And how many times did that conversation happen before it felt real?
Only once, to be honest, because Jake is such a person where he finds something he wants to do and he's so committed. And to me, I always want to be the wife who's going to be super supportive. And I always want, you know, whether it's putting me through something or not, like I always want to be there to support him. That's what we're supposed to do. And I know he'd do the same thing for me if I decided to come home and say I want to run for office. I honestly, when he told me, it's not that I wasn't surprised. Like, I wasn't super surprised just because he's always shown a commitment to the public and wanting to make a difference. That's what he does with his law cases. And, you know, so it wasn't super surprising. I did ask, like, are you sure? Because, you know, it's definitely a big endeavor to go through and, you know, it's a lot, but it's something worth fighting for.
Absolutely.
So I'll let you tell about how I came home after church, and you can give them the rundown of that story, and then it was a good reaction. She had good reactions, but it was scary because unlike Jake, there wasn't this. You know, I'm not a lawyer. There's no natural progression for me. It was to me, I feel like it was a calling. I'll only tell this part of the story. Mm-hmm. We'll see. I was in church, and our pastor gave a speech about being involved in politics as a Christian. Mm-hmm. And so I made the I'm not going to call it a mistake because I made the decision. I'm going to pray. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to ask God to give me something to do. Tell me something to do, and I'll go do it. And I was like, you know, I'll hand out flyers. I'll knock on doors. You know, those are just some good options, God. You can pick from those. And he very clearly told me I needed to run for office. And this was out of the blue. This wasn't, you know, again, there's no big plan for that. Mm-hmm. And then I'll let you pick it up from there.
Well, I guess it was just like right after COVID and churches had started opening up, thankfully. And you came home and you shared that with me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I immediately just thought about Jonah. I was like, okay, if we have to be obedient, if God calls us to do something, there's a reason. And if we don't do that, then there's a consequence. And it's not just a consequence that we'll pay. And, you know, Eddie is very, very involved in the school board for our children, for other people's children. You know, I just think about it all the time. I pray every day for our children's spouses. They're there. They could be in this state. And they're being indoctrinated, divided, and that's not how God wants us to be. So I wasn't surprised that Eddie felt so passionately about the school system, but then it all made sense to me. I was like, okay, God, we're going to listen. this is how we can accomplish this. Like, we're going to the school board meetings. It's not really effective. They are trained to not even respond to you. You get nothing back. So if we're trusting these places with our children, this change, like Eddie going for State House, could impact them forever, like all children. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, we should be united as Republicans. We should be united in wanting to raise great children. And so I wasn't shocked, but I was like, oh my gosh, God, like, we're going to be in for it for sure. It's been a full experience. It's great, but like you said, like, I'm Eddie's helpmate. I'm going to be there cheering him on, biggest cheerleader. We joke. Some people were like, you guys are like Chip and Joanna, like cheering each other on all the time. That's what I want to be, and I'm in for it. So like you said, want to show support.
Well, it's a lot of nights. There's nothing Republicans love to do more than get together with other Republicans at night and
After
talk
work,
about
they're
Republican
working.
things.
They're working.
That's what I've learned is we love to have meetings about when we're going to have the next meeting so we can set up the next meeting. Because we don't want to be more than 3 meetings away from another meeting.
That's right.
So it's been a lot of that. And, it's been a challenge because I've always come home from work and been home. That's the life we set up, and we were very happy in it. And then, COVID hit. And I'm sure you guys, have your own experiences from it. But for us, it was eye-opening. It was terrifying that the place we go, First Amendment right, you can always worship. You go, you have this freedom of religion, and then they closed it. And I remember growing up, and you read Revelation, and you're like, man, I just don't. How are they gonna take church away? Like, I don't get that. Who's gonna ever accept church going away? I'm like, church people have all the guns too. Like, this is a terrible. Like, you're not gonna get me out of church, and then if you try to, we have all the guns.
Oh my gosh.
You're not gonna be able to do it. It's the First Amendment. We're gonna fight for that. Wars have been fought over less. I mean, that's the reality of this country. And we went a month with our church closed and didn't think anything of it. And then one day I just woke up and I was like, they closed our church. They closed our church, and I thanked them for it.
Because we were worried. And
because
fear,
we were
Yeah.
still living in fear at that moment. It was, the government took away where I wanted to go worship, and I had thanked them. I was like, well, that's how they do it.
Yeah.
They put enough fear of something else in you. And that was a moment for us where I think we realized that things are heading in the wrong direction. And, think of how fortunate we were here in Georgia. If we had Gavin Newsom, we'd still be closed down.
Or Stacey
Abrams.
Or Stacey
Yes.
Abrams, right? Exactly, perfect example. And that's the fear that it really got us out of our seats. Like, we have to change something. I don't know maybe the best way to do it, but I know what needs to be changed, and we'll figure it out when we get there. So it's good to see that you guys are doing it as a team, because like you said, it's the two of you, and no one's going to support you like your spouse.
Right.
One of the other things we've seen a lot of is we start to feel like like salespeople.
Oh yeah.
Some people really want to talk to you.
Oh yeah.
Some people are really excited to come up to you and talk to you. And then other people see you come in the building at church, and
they dart away.
They dart away like, oh, you're going to ask me for money. I know what you're going to do. It's like when you're trying to, hey, I've got these bags I'm trying to sell. You start to get treated that way. It's difficult. So tell us, what do y'all do to relax? What do y'all do to not be political for a moment?
Well, we go to dinner.
It's so true. That's all we do.
We've been working hard. I mean, we really have. It's it's the hardest thing I've ever done. I mean, no doubt about it. But you have, blessings. I mean, there was one day we were over at the QT by the Avenue, and a guy came in, and he had been following us on social media. We didn't know him, and he just wanted to pray for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so you have days like that, and those kind of just energize you, and you have to stay focused on why you're in it. You've got to have confidence in voters. I mean, I think, from being a lawyer, you always, at the end of the day, you don't want to try to force a jury to make a decision. You want to give them the facts and have faith and confidence they're going to make the right decision.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with me and voters. At the end of the day, I'm not here to force them. I'm here to give them a very clear path on what I view is the best path for the country and what this country needs. And it's resonated. And then you've got to have faith and confidence that they're going to make, because if you obsess over all the dynamics in a race, you're going to drive yourself crazy.
And praying.
Yeah,
Praying
absolutely.
is very important. And just giving it to God, and, you know, the rest takes care of itself. It does take a lot of hard work, but it's true. I mean, our relaxation is actually going to dinner.
What about you guys?
Yeah.
What do you feel? Maybe we need to learn from you.
Yeah, what do you guys do?
Well, go ahead.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like when you're
I mean,
passionate
probably
about
mostly with
something,
the kids.
it's probably, the kids probably slow us down sometimes because they're like, Audrey knows too much about politics probably. But just, I mean, running, exercise is probably like my thing because it helps me like blow off steam. It's hard though, because you're passionate about something. That's what you want to talk about. You want to make a change. So it might come across as a lot to some other people, but I mean, I feel like you all understand where we're coming from, but really just, I think just reading
Shooting guns.
Yeah. I think just like reading the Bible and feeling like, okay, I'm on the right path. God, like just keep opening the right doors. Like you said, you needed encouragement that day. Someone comes up to pray for you. That is totally a God thing. So I think that's what relaxes and energizes me at the same time.
Yeah.
Just following that.
Yeah. So one of the things we do, and Danny wouldn't normally tell this story.
Oh, gosh.
So we go shoot a fair amount. And I grew up, my parents had guns, but we learned how to shoot them if we needed to. Danny's dad was in the Coast Guard. He lives in Alabama.
Dothan, Alabama.
He collects guns. It's a very different atmosphere. So Danny shot guns for sport.
Well, I'm one of 4 girls, so like there was no boy to do it with, so we had to go hunting, fishing, and shooting with my dad, all of us girls. So
we'll go shoot and we'll go into the range, and I'm the only guy getting lessons from his wife, and she's standing over my shoulder, like, no, that's not gonna do it, and it's the lethal weapon thing where I go, look at how great I did, and then she moves it 10 yards farther, and
she's like, oh my God,
he's being too sweet.
So we do a fair amount of that, and then a lot with the kids. We're pretty involved in our church, and we teach in Awana's class, and that's something that we talked about. Should I not be doing this? Wednesday night, so I need this time to be out on the campaign, and we've decided that we can't give up an impact, and it's been a lifesaver because it's relaxing. Yeah. Because these kids don't care.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
They're puts things into perspective.
Yeah, they're not. They don't know anything about the politics involved, and
nor should they sometimes.
Right. They're just there to have fun, and we get to hang out with them. And it's 2.5 hours a week.
You should tell them about what Steven said.
Yeah. So one of our students did find out about me running, and he said, I hear you're trying to be a politician. And I said,
this kid is wicked smart.
Something like that. And then he's like, you really have to get a lot more popular.
Oh my gosh.
and then he goes, there's a road out there right outside the church. You should put a sign there.
He did.
Because people drive by it, they'll see your name. He's like, you've got to get more popular.
So I told him, I said, anyway, you should put the sign right there. He's in 3rd grade.
Yeah.
Oh, 3rd grade.
Third grade.
Yeah. And he's brilliant.
Smart kid.
He memorizes
so
books
smart.
of the Bible.
He's so smart.
He is brilliant. But that was a little bit of a kick.
Yeah.
That was tough to hear. That's tough to hear from an 8-year-old.
He's trying to help, though.
He is trying
yes,
to help.
he is.
And that's the thing, from the mouth of babes, right?
Yeah.
It's just honesty. So where do you guys go from here? How do people get in contact with you? Where do they follow you? Where do they hear your message? Where can they go online?
Yeah. So we've got a website, jakeevans.org. I'd love for people to take a look at it. If they haven't already seen our launch video, you'll enjoy it. It's us driving a Jeep through the mud and splashing mud on Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, and all their face. But on there, we're building out the volunteer team as Team Trailblazers. I'm campaigning as a conservative trailblazer, so I'd love to have as many people that want to help deliver the great comeback to retake America. Jake Evans, GA is our social media handle, so stay in touch with us there. And it's been a pleasure joining you guys today.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. Great joining you guys.